I want to welcome everybody to the IDP, the regular IDP meeting. Today is June 18th, 2019. It is 6:01 p.m. And tonight we have Sheriff Richard Mack. Richard Mack is the former sheriff of Graham County, Arizona, and a political activist. I'm going to make sure everyone else remains muted out. So we're going to go over a couple of rules. One of the things is if you want to ask a question, you're going to raise your hand. The way that you raise your hand is if you find your name up at the top there, you'll find three little dots. If you hit the three little dots, somewhere in there, you will have the ability to raise your hand. And then I will call on you in the order in which I find you, and then you'll get an opportunity to ask a question. But first of all, I'd like to welcome Richard Mack, and I am unmuting him right now. Hi, Richard.
Well, hi, Jackie. Hi, everybody. Do we know how many are with us tonight?
Right now, we have 16, and I'm sure there's more on their way.
Okay, wonderful.
So I don't know if you guys can see me. I see my video. Oh, yeah, there I am.
I can see you.
Okay, yeah, I see. Okay, so I must be in the wrong view. Let me go to speaker view. That way I can see. All right, I think that's better. And hold on, we've already got some chat stuff. Yes, you can record. I'm going to have to give you permissions to record. I will be recording, and the recording will be available. I will send it out. I actually post it under wherever I've done these invites, but if you specifically ask, I will send you a copy. So hold on a minute, let me change my full screen, and Callie, let me give you the right to record. Okay, is somebody else going to ask me about that? Let me see. Hi, Salam. So Richard, how are you doing?
Really well. It's a beautifully hot day in Arizona.
I'm really excited about having you on. So I remember learning about the constitutional sheriffs. I think, was it as far back as 2013, 2012, something like that?
I wrote the book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope, in 2009.
Okay.
Right at the beginning of the year. Mm-hmm. And then we actually formed the CSPOA, the Constitutional Sheriffs and Peace Officers Association. And I believe that Keith Broders has been to at least one of our conventions. Maybe how many? 3, 2? He showed it. Yeah, I couldn't see how many fingers you showed, Keith. Do it again. 2. Okay, good. Yeah. Okay, he's been to 2. They were really quite miraculous. I believe he was at the first one, and it was absolutely a miracle. And a lot of the things that have happened pursuant to that have been very miraculous. And but I'm not satisfied with that, and we have so much more to do, and we need a good 500, 600, 700, which would put it about 1/4 of all the sheriffs in the nation. We need them to be solid constitutional sheriffs every minute of the day. And if we had that, we would take America back tomorrow.
Wow, man after my own heart. Okay, I have a couple of questions. So would you consider the office of sheriff to be the chief law enforcement officer in the county?
Well, yeah, that of course he is. And there's 2 reasons why. Primarily because he is elected. He is the only law enforcement officer elected in this country. And because of that, he reports to the power source. The chief of police is a bureaucrat. The head of the highway patrol is a bureaucrat. They're appointed. They answer to non-elected officials most of the time. Sometimes they answer to elected officials. Doesn't change it. He's a bureaucrat. He doesn't answer to the people. The other reason why, again, and you could read this in my book, The County Sheriff, America's Last Hope. It's only 50 pages. It's really powerful. It's at cspoa.org. But the other reason is because of the history. The office of sheriff goes back over 1,000 years. He was the first cop or law enforcement officer in the United States. No, scratch that. In the American territory.
Hmm.
And three founding fathers who signed the Declaration of Independence were actually former sheriffs. Oliver Wolcott comes to mind. I can't remember the other two, but Oliver Wolcott's one of my favorite founding fathers, and he's a former sheriff. He's a real tough guy, and he's really strong on the principles of liberty, obviously. But yes, and coincidentally, the
Hmm.
lawsuit that I filed against the federal government actually mentions the Brady bill mentions that the uh, chief law enforcement officer of every county would be required to conduct the background checks pursuant to the Brady bill. They actually call all of us the chief law enforcement officer. So if you want that in writing from the federal government, all you have to do is refer to the Brady bill.
That's excellent. And it kind of brings me to my next question. So election funding, you mentioned about elected officials. How does that affect the office? Because basically, if you have an incumbent that has come in, let's say, as a non-elected person, like somebody who's replaced another sheriff, so he's temporarily appointed, then
Right.
as an incumbent, he really has a big benefit that other officers don't have.
He has the advantage, no question, and we've seen that in all offices, not with the sheriff. However, to counter that somewhat, I was the incumbent of 2 terms, and I got beat bad my third term. And really crazily, my strength became my weakness. People didn't like that I was suing the government. They liked that I was standing for guns, and I became a big fish in a small pond, and people didn't like that. The other small fish don't like that, and it just. Oh, and another thing on that, if I had won the case before my election, I probably would have won re-election. But everybody said I was going to lose, and I was wasting my time, and so I lost the election. And 10 months later, I win at the United States Supreme Court.
Wow.
And so we moved on from there. It was the best job I ever had. I love being sheriff. And I did some things as sheriff that I think were even more monumental than the Supreme Court decision.
Yes. So in regards to other influences, how much influence does county council have on the office of sheriff?
You're talking about the Board of Supervisors,
Board of Supervisors, county council, yeah.
county commissioners. Most counties call them the county commissioners.
Okay.
Arizona and California are the Board of Supervisors.
Mm-hmm.
We have to work with them on budget, but they don't control the sheriff, and he doesn't report to them. He needs to work with them.
Okay.
Most of the time, they don't work very well together.
Okay.
Because the county commissioners or board always wants the sheriff to do more with less money, and so that always becomes a sticking point and a source of contention. But be that as it may, the sheriff does not report to the county attorney. He doesn't report to the council. He doesn't report to the governor. He reports to the people. They are his only boss. That is a very unique situation. And that's why I loved being sheriff. I only had to answer to the people.
Okay. So you didn't check with like county council to see if something you was going to do was legal on their books?
No.
Okay. Good. In terms of the federal government and federal funding, how much influence do they have over the office?
Well, lamentably, that's way too much. My office didn't have any, except we had a contract with the Federal Bureau of Prisons to take some of their inmates. We had a federal prison right there in my county, about 10 miles away from the sheriff's office. If they needed disciplinary issues or if they needed more space, they contracted with us. I had to agree to that. They couldn't just come in and say, you're taking our prisoners.
Mm-hmm.
And so I agreed to it. They paid us, they paid us about $1 million a year to do that.
Wow.
And of course, but just so you know, though, all the other federal grants that were thrown my way or the sheriffs all over the country, I threw them in the trash.
Okay, but
I wouldn't take them.
so that would be on a county by county basis then, because I would
It
imagine
is.
a lot of sheriffs take it.
It is. And Josephine County, Oregon is a good example of that because they used to have a real good sheriff there. And he was funded like 30–40% by the federal government. Federal government cut the funds and he lost 60% of his department.
Wow.
Yeah. And so it was, I kept telling sheriffs all over the country that that was going to happen.
Yeah.
But, you know, they're just suckers for the money. And I guess that's human nature. I don't know. But the board always wants you to take the money so they can take money from the sheriff's budget and use it for other things. Once that starts, there's no stopping it.
There's no stopping it. Yeah, we see that a lot. So now, in terms of the sheriffs that are in the court system, so like the bailiffs or sheriffs that do evictions, are they the same as your office? Are they separate? And what influence does the court have over them?
Sometimes the bailiff is hired by the court. It's really the sheriff's responsibility.
Okay.
But some sheriffs don't care if the courts do that. When I was there, we provided any type of assistance the court wanted that way, security for the court. But it was very minimal. The court didn't seem to be that busy, and we were grateful for that. But if they needed anything, we did it. If they needed, obviously, jail transporting an inmate to court was our job. Transporting an inmate to Phoenix for evaluation, a psych evaluation, or transporting him to the hospital or any place else. That's all the sheriff's responsibility. Oh, and foreclosures, yes. And one of the things I hated the most about the job is that the sheriff is the tax collector for the county. I was very careful with that. And not only that, but I would not, very rarely, in fact, I don't even remember one, did I foreclose on anybody. And that is something that I really got after the IRS for. One time for a citizen, they garnished 90% of his wages. He had 8 children, and they garnished 90% of his wages. You know, it's like dealing with the evil king that just will not let go. And the IRS, the bottom line with the IRS is it's the most unconstitutional, ruthless, evil criminal organization on the face of the planet. The only thing that comes close to it is the cartels and the mafia.
Wow, I'm sure everyone on this call loved that.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, so in terms of the coroner, so here, you know, the coroner and the sheriff used to have their own offices, and then certainly in California, those offices merged. Did they do the same in Arizona? And no, so
no, I was not the coroner, and the sheriff is not the coroner. They should be separate.
They should be separate, yeah.
And not only that, in Arizona, it says the only person who can arrest the sheriff is the coroner.
Is the coroner, yeah. That causes a problem here.
So if it's one and the same, then you just lost a check of balance, because the reason they put that in there is the coroner is not above the sheriff in any way.
No.
But they just had to have some sort of check and balance just in case the sheriff got abusive and criminal, that there was at least somebody somewhere in the county who could go after it.
Yeah. So in California, we lost a lot of our offices due to those merging, such as the county recorders, the auditor, the treasurer, the tax collector. All these offices, you know, got divided in half basically, and these checks and balances were lost. Okay, so so are you aware that the sheriff has both statutory and inherent common law duties?
Yes, I am aware of that. I am not as familiar with common law as I would like to be. I've been to classes about common law, and I think that it's still an open book and something for all of us to learn, because common law just doesn't seem to be all that common.
Yes.
but I do buy into one definition I heard of it. It's the law that was common by nature.
Yes. Yeah.
And and I like that.
Yeah, and it's very local. So, I mean, if you live in the mountains, you have certain laws that were local to you. And if you live at the beach, it was different, or in the forest. So
Right.
they were very local, and they made common sense.
Correct.
Yes. So how much training does an average deputy have on enforcing, like the Constitution, for instance? Do they learn anything about that just in normal training? Zero.
The only time that happens is if you have a constitutional sheriff that actually does something about that and does it. Uh, uh, Keith knows this, and you might as well know it too. I provide that training nationwide, and the CSPOA provides it. And at our first convention, we had about 95 sheriffs from all across the country, but only about 10 of those sheriffs are still in office. And so it's a constant. There's 3,100 sheriffs in America. They change every year,
Wow.
and but not all of them. It's about the off year, the odd years. It's about a third of. It's about maybe 2/5 of the sheriffs. Well, yeah, even putting it in that percentage, most of them happen the same year of the presidential election, but
Okay.
some elections happen every single year. And then you have sheriffs that are retiring, you have some that lose, you have some that pass away, and it's really a full-time job just trying to keep track of it. It's like herding cats. And so we really need the funding to be able to stay in constant touch with the sheriffs. And I know emails help, but I found also that more personal contact with me really helps the most.
So basically, how can we help with that? I know Keith has, reached out to local sheriffs and stuff in the past.
Mhm.
The same with Kirk Beck. Is that something that you think is a good idea? How can we help?
Yeah, absolutely. All of you need to vet your sheriffs, and in a very pleasant way.
Sure.
And I know Keith has done that too. He hasn't been confrontational to the sheriffs. Even if you have a jerk sheriff, even if you have a guy who doesn't know the Constitution from a hole in the ground,
Mhm.
that's okay. I was like that once. I wasn't born a constitutionalist. I wasn't born a constitutional sheriff. I look back at it now and I can see God's handwriting on the wall about how I was trained and primed for the work that I did as sheriff. Uh, so we need to be patient with these guys, but I don't know how many Christians we have on the phone. I would imagine all of you are. But Jesus Christ's ministry was 3 years. What if he would have come out and just said, "Look, you're all supposed to be Christians and follow the gospel. Now, dadgummit, do it." No, he taught, and he was so patient, and he gave parables, and he was strong in doing that. Yes, but he was also what does the New Testament say? He was wise as a serpent and harmless as a dove, and he was very extremely wise, and he was a great teacher. And we need to do likewise in approaching our chefs. But yes, they need to be vetted. You ought to hand them my book. I know at one time we sent a book to everybody. All the sheriffs in the country about 8 years ago got a copy of my book. But again, how many of those sheriffs are still in office? And,
Yeah.
how many of them read it? Maybe 2% actually read the book. That's why I wrote it short, because they wouldn't have any excuse not to read it. But it's an extremely powerful book, and it's an extremely eye-opening, and it's bold, and it's revolutionary. But it shouldn't be. It shouldn't be revolutionary. This all should be already happening. And it does come down to one simple, very simple thing. Sheriff, you took an oath of office. Will you keep your oath? And they'll all say yes. And then you'll say, how is it that you keep your oath then? Have you ever read the Constitution? Have you ever studied the Constitution? If Let's take a simple one. For example, Sheriff, do you believe the Second Amendment? Well, of course I believe the Second Amendment. Then why are you charging people permits to keep and bear arms? Uh, your only duty in regards to the Second Amendment is to make sure that it is never violated, that it is never infringed. and that we do this. If you could go through the First Amendment, we charge churches to pay taxes and to get their tax exempt status. We charge for to peaceably assemble, so we charge permits for that. We charge a lot of times for free speech. It just gets ridiculous. And then, of course, we charge people for their Second Amendment rights, and it goes on and on. And then the Eighth Amendment is violated every day by our law enforcement community, and sheriffs are a part of that. How do you explain to a sheriff that a traffic ticket is cruel and unusual punishment and excessive fines or bail? Those are so excessive, and if there's anything that was a violation of it, it would be that. And then you have sheriffs in this country and law enforcement who do asset forfeiture before a conviction.
Yes.
And it is, I mean, so I'm giving those examples to just show you, you can't go into a sheriff and say, why don't you keep your oath? What are you, stupid? And so I'll be the first one to admit time is of the essence and we need to get moving. But I really, really tell you, we could be doing this if we could ever get the CSPOA funded.
Yeah.
And we've been working on a shoestring budget ever since we've been here. And it's just so hard to stay connected and to do this work. And right now I have a sheriff in Oregon who wants to meet with me. And I want to fly out there and meet with him. And I don't have the money. And so it's really difficult to do this job and get the sheriffs educated without funding.
So just so that people can understand that the other side of that. So we have something called POST, which is Peace Officers Standardized Training, certainly here in California.
Almost every state has that. There's a California POST, Arizona POST.
Exactly.
Some of them call it a different name, like Texas, they call it a different name, but it's all the same. And it's the state bureaucracy that oversees the qualifications to be a certified peace officer in that state.
And generally that funding comes from the citation process. And that to me is a conflict of interest. And now just imagine if a little portion of that went to the CSPOA. I mean,
oh boy,
it would be great.
Yeah. Yeah, I probably wouldn't take that money though.
No, you probably wouldn't take that money, and I don't think they should be getting it either.
90% of those tickets shouldn't be written in the first place. Now, I'm not against all tickets.
Yes.
But they need to have a victim, and they need to have at least a complainant other than the cop.
That's wonderful, because actually that was my very next question.
Okay, good. Yeah.
That was the idea of having victimless crimes. I mean, many of us here suffer the consequences of so-called victimless crimes, or what we call revenue generation.
Well, the drug war is probably the worst culprit at that too, and I'm very much against the drug war.
Okay, what about traffic citations?
Well, like I said, 90% of them should never be written. They're a violation of the Eighth Amendment, especially in California.
Oh, California's terrible.
Your average speeding ticket is like $700. You got to be kidding me! And somebody doesn't know that that's excessive.
That's excessive.
Oh my God!
And the impounding of cars, like you said, asset forfeiture.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and we do find that to be quite a racket here.
That's a good term for it.
Okay, so I think that's wonderful. So I think we pretty much covered all my questions. So anybody else here have some questions? What are you doing later? Like, what's your next step? Are you writing any new books? What's going on with you right now? Yeah,
I'm putting together. I'm trying to revamp one of the other booklets that I have about law enforcement. It's called The Proper Role of Law Enforcement, and then taking that and combining it with the County Sheriff America's Last Hope, and then putting in some new stuff. And Rick Dalton is the vice president of CSPOA. He's a retired peace officer. And he and I are going to put this book together. I hope to get it done this summer, because to make ends meet, I actually teach high school. I'm a high school teacher.
Oh, wow. Okay. We do have a couple of questions. Salam, I saw your hand first.
Hello, do you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, Sheriff Mack. It's a pleasure to talk to you. My question to law enforcement officials always is, to what extent are you aware of the actual nature of, like, let's say traffic tickets? Let's start with that. The commercial versus non-commercial use of automobiles, the whole argument of a right to travel and all that.
Yeah, I'm actually very familiar with that. But I will tell you
Well,
that is not. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, I didn't mean, I want to hear what you have to say, but my question specifically is, I mean, I figure you would know, but
Yeah.
more generally, I'm wondering, across the nation, there's this idea that some people have that I dispel or try to dispel, because I don't think it's true, that police officers and sheriffs, know the law, they know the Constitution, but they're just hiding it from us. And so, in terms of like training, in terms of just overall knowledge, in terms of just a cadet or a new officer who is joining the force, joining law enforcement for the first time, are they? I don't imagine they're ever given any direct training or any secret knowledge that they're supposed to keep from the citizens.
No,
Correct.
no, they don't. They're trained in statutory law. They're trained primarily. They are trained in firearms, physical fitness, and the criminal code and the traffic code. That's your academy. Some academies are like 3 months. Some are as much as 6 months. And it is some big time inculcating. I won't say brainwashing, but it's inculcating. The brainwashing in America is that the cops wear a badge and has a gun and he's the boss. And he has to show people who's the boss. The job is backwards. Police in this country, deputies and sheriffs in this country have been brainwashed into believing that their purpose of being here is writing tickets, kicking in doors, going after the drug dealers and the drug users, going after the potheads, going after the drunk drivers. And I'm not downplaying all of that. I mean, I hate drug abuse. I just hate the drug war more, and we're going out about it wrong. And the drug war has failed. But all of these issues have failed. The way we go after drunk driving, roadblocks. Is there anyone that doesn't know and understand that a roadblock to check people for drinking violates the Fourth Amendment? That is what we teach. We teach that. And that you can do those lawfully if you make them voluntary. And so as far as your issue, or several of yours might be, of not having a driver's license or the right to travel, we do not train at our training. Keith can vouch for this. We do not. That's not part of our training. We hope that sheriffs will come to the realization on that one. But in a 1 day or 2 day deal, that one's not on the top of our list. And I apologize right up front for it. But let me tell you how to put this. It's not the hill we want to die on. And I'm sorry, I have a driver's license. I've told family members who've actually been in my jail because they didn't have a driver's license that I would release them. And they told me, no, don't release me because they're watching you and they're going to go after you if you do. And so I appreciated him being that sensitive to my position. I let him do a lot of work. I let him come and go as he pleased inside the jail. He cleaned and worked and he wanted to stay busy. But I'm telling you right now, we have so many key issues of innocent people going to prison.
Yeah.
We have so many issues with the IRS. We have so many issues with cops taking people to jail like we see on the news almost every day now. And we have got to change the way police look at their jobs. They are not a enforcement officer. They are a defender of the United States Constitution. They are a guard. They are a guard of the Republic.
Wow, that's wonderful. That's great. Arthur, please.
Well, I have a follow-up, please.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Salem.
Thank you. I'll be quick.
Okay.
One question was, do you think that show Cops that started in the early 90s, I believe, do you think that kind of changed the perception, or that cops today grew up on that perception that that's what their job is, this exciting, hyperactive go out and bust the ass of criminals. And so do you think that that was intentional? And then I have just one other quick question.
Oh my God, you're cheating now. Do you see my rules down there? You guys are all rule breakers.
Oh, I didn't see the rules.
Go ahead. Going quick.
Oh, well, the follow-up, what's an unrelated question, but it has to do with like what do you think the reception would be amongst your average sheriff across the country if somebody approached them or came to actually want to sit down and talk to them about the Constitution and things like that as it stands today, and the right to travel and those kinds of topics?
Thank you. Go ahead. Oh.
It's you again. That is not what you want to lead with in talking with the sheriff. You want to talk about the Constitution. Stick to the Bill of Rights. Just stick to those basic 27 principles that are in the Bill of Rights, especially number 8, especially number 2, especially number 1, number 4 also, number 5 also. And then my case was based on the 10th Amendment, and you want to like introduce them to my Supreme Court case and let them study that, because it's the only time you can lead with this. The only time a sheriff sued the federal government and won a case at the U.S. Supreme Court. The only time ever in our nation's history, ever. It hasn't happened before. It hasn't happened since. And so the next one was cops. I hate that show. But most cops get it from, they want to be Clint Eastwood. They want to be John Wayne. All these movies, people, and I remember when I was a rookie cop and the first time I had the red and blue lights on, I got chills and thinking, oh man, look at me. I'm just like on TV. I'm just like on the movies. That is a huge effect on the psyche of our nation's cadets and the ones that are in there. And believe me, everything you brought up about cops is worse than you think.
Wow. Okay, Arthur Paul.
Oh, by the way, point of order.
Go ahead.
How long are we going? I can't go too far past an hour.
Okay, so we remember, guys, not too long past an hour. So an hour is great. That's fantastic. Go ahead, Arthur.
Yeah, real quick, I wanted to, Jackie, we're doing the SEAL research, and as it relates to the writs of execution, and I'm curious if you can elaborate on that and share with Sheriff Mack, what would happen if he got a stipulation of material facts that says that the writs of possession were not statutorily compliant, and if we called out sheriffs on that. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
So one of the things that we've discovered here in California, I wrote to all of the county courts, all 58, and I've had back 32 responses. Of those responses, only one has the requisite seal. So the seal is supposed to be on 3 different processes: the summons, a warrant of arrest, and a writ. And so basically what we're seeing is sheriffs serving writs of possession that are not facially valid. They do not have the requisite seal on them. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I saw your video that referenced that a little bit. I think that would be pretty easy for them to take care of, and they should.
That's what I can't understand. Why won't they just get the right seal? There's even funding available for that. I mean,
yeah, and I'm sure that wouldn't cost very much either.
It doesn't, $30 or so.
Yeah, okay.
I mean, but some of us might even buy it for them.
Yeah, right. Yeah, and there's that, and that the judges or other people in public office refuse to even admit that they took an oath of office.
Yes.
And they refuse to show that they have a copy of it. And I can honestly tell you, I did not have a written copy of my oath. It was taken in public, it was recorded, and it was done in public. It was all in the paper and all of that. But I was not aware of the law that I had to keep a copy of my oath. I would have been happy to sign it for anybody. I would have been happy to make one, but I did not know that was a law. So there is a lot of ignorance out there, but the main thing is you keep your oath. And I did. I tried a lot to do that. And I even turned down some writs of execution and some foreclosures sometimes because they didn't have the proper paperwork, or it was just wrong. What they were doing was wrong, and it was cruel. And sometimes one in particular, there was a Mexican family. They were trying to repossess their trailer, and the trailer wasn't worth $3,000. I mean, it was, and I said, where are we going to put them? Are you just going to put them on the welfare rolls? And so I went back to the county attorney, went back to the judge, and I went to Chase, and I said, we're not doing this. And you would maybe get, it's probably going to be a value of 3,000. You'd probably get 1,500. I'm not going through this for $1,500. Get rid of this. I'm not doing it. If you want to try some other way, I guess you could try to go around me, but don't. And we didn't. And several times I did stuff like that. And it didn't happen a lot. It wasn't an everyday thing for me, not at all. Standing up to the federal government was very rare for me. But there were 3 or 4 times I did it, and it was pretty powerful.
Okay. Rick, I'm going to unmute you and lower your hand. Go ahead.
Sheriff Mack, real quick, you said you weren't that familiar with the common law, and there's an actual definition from an English law dictionary from 1750 and another one from the Thomas Tomlin's English law dictionary from 1835, and they're identical. But the point here is the Bible is part of the common law. That's why you don't hear much about it. And the definition, and you may not know this, but when everybody's supposed to all rise when they come into the court?
Yeah.
You know why that was?
No.
Because the judge used to come into court with the Bible under his arm and set it down on his bench, because that was the highest law. And if whatever came before him conflicted with that, that was what was supposed to govern. That's simple. But let me read it real quick. It's not that long. The common law, lex communis, is taken for the law of this kingdom simply, without any other laws, semicolon, as it was generally holden before any statute was enacted in Parliament to alter the same.
Mm-hmm.
And the king's courts of justice are called the common law courts. The common law is grounded upon the general customs of the realm and includes in it the law of nature, the law of God, the principles and maxims of the law. It is founded upon reason and said to be the perfection of reason, acquired by long study and observation. Where was it?
Well, let me stop you there. Can you do me a favor? Email that to me.
Okay, well, Jackie has, and she can actually mail it. And
okay, well, all of you can have my email, sheriffmack@hotmail.com.
Okay.
sheriffmack@hotmail.com.
And one thing I was going to say, just to finish off, Sheriff Mack, is the common law is superior to the statutory law. When she talks about inherent common law duties, and just like the difference between a peace officer and a law enforcement officer.
We have a hard time convincing cops that this Constitution is supreme to traffic laws.
Oh, that's the problem with the schools too.
Oh, I know. Yeah.
All right. Thank you, Rick.
Thank you, Sheriff Mack.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, Ruben.
Yeah, I had a real quick question. Since all of our law enforcement is money driven, and being everybody is motivated by the amount of busts they get, their increased rank is by the amount of busts, and and the enforcement of basically the aggressive enforcement of laws, as they see it. So with that in place, is there any way possible that things can be reversed to where people are actually living in a just world again, or is it just a lost cause for us?
We teach that, Ruben, and that's a great question. We teach that, and it's part of our curriculum. And we teach primarily a very historical event, December 1st, 1955, when Rosa Parks was arrested. We actually teach cops, if you were truly a constitutional guard, if you were truly keeping your oath, if you were truly a constitutional sheriff or deputy, what would you have done when you got on that bus to arrest Rosa Parks?
Yeah.
And of course, this situation is in my book. A true constitutional sheriff would have sat down next to Rosa Parks, would have shaken her hand, would have escorted her home safely with a deputy with him, would have given her home extra patrol all through the night and the coming days to make sure that no hooded knights abuse them or worse, lynch them, and made sure that she lived in peace. That is a true constitutional sheriff, and that is what a constitutional sheriff should be doing today for all the Rosa Parks out there who just want to be left alone.
Yeah, great answer.
Thank you.
All right, Ed. I'm unmuting
Yes.
you and lowering your hand. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. Hi, Sheriff. I had a
Hi.
question for you. You mentioned the Fourth Amendment. And one thing I ran across in looking at the Fourth Amendment is that there's a motor vehicle exception where the cops can arrest you without due process, or without probable cause, I should say, and without a warrant.
Where do you see that? And that's not it. There's no vehicular exception in the Fourth Amendment.
Yeah,
No.
it says the motor vehicle exception is a legal rule in the United States that modifies the normal probable cause requirement of the Fourth Amendment to the United States Constitution.
Well, is that a Supreme Court decision or something
Yes.
else even?
Yes, it was a Supreme Court decision.
Well, that doesn't mean anything. They can't violate the Constitution either. I admit readily that the Supreme Court and other courts, district and circuit courts, have violated the Constitution, but they're not law, and we have no obligation to follow those. And I guarantee you that we train just the opposite. We train our officers to follow the Fourth Amendment, no matter what courts have said, no matter what our instruction books at the police academy say. The Bill of Rights are there primarily, if you study and understand what the intent of the founders was in putting the Bill of Rights together. They wanted a list of rights that could not be exempted, that were not, there are certain rules and laws, yes, even common law, that cannot be exempted or altered or violated or infringed one iota. And the founders listed 27 of those within the Bill of Rights. And the Bill of Rights was a list of rights that government could never violate. And just because some stupid court gives us permission to violate those, my oath does not allow me to.
Yeah, from my understanding, an automobile is an effect under the Fourth Amendment. That's one of your...
Correct. I agree with that.
Yeah.
I think one of the dangerous things, though, is since it was approved by the Supreme Court, and it is in writing, and it's probably being taught, at least in some police jurisdictions, they're acting on it. And, it doesn't really matter to defend yourself, because they believe that they're in the right, and they're going to deal with you with extreme prejudice if you try to do something in the contrary to it.
Yeah, I would tell you on any traffic stop, be polite, never be belligerent or violent, especially not violent, because you will lose that one. And I don't want you to. You can accept the ticket or accept whatever they do, and then try to fight it afterwards. And I admit that's difficult, and that the system is on their side. I saw it personally. However, I don't want you getting hurt.
This is your,
One
your license plate?
question I had for you was, can you see this on the screen?
Yes.
If someone had a license plate on their car like this, which said it was a private household good, it comes from Arthur versus Morgan, which was a Supreme Court decision, and was reaffirmed by Hill House versus the United States.
Well, I can tell you that would not mean anything to me when I was first a rookie cop, and it doesn't mean anything to cops.
But if you say to the cop when they're arresting you, what evidence do you have that this is a motor vehicle? When this says that it's private property, private household good, they have no evidence that it's a motor vehicle.
I would probably say when I was the first 3 years of being a cop, I don't care.
Yep.
Here's your
That's
ticket.
what they would say.
If you don't sign the
Couldn't you
ticket,
ask him?
if you don't sign the ticket, I'm taking you to jail. You
Yeah.
sign the ticket, it's up to you to
Go to the
ask
judge.
for a hearing.
Yeah.
Couldn't you ask him to talk to the supervisor?
Well, you can do that anyway. Ed, you're violating the rule. One question, one follow-up.
Bye.
My supervisor would have said the same thing.
Yes.
He's the one that
Okay.
he's the one that trained me to do that.
Okay. Sorry, Jackie.
That's okay. Okay, Salam, you have the floor again. Remember, one question, one follow-up. Follow-up means it relates to the first, and we have 45 minutes, so go ahead.
All right. So if I wanted to, like, let's say, approach the sheriff to talk to him about perhaps, notifying him that I believe I have a right to travel and my car is household good, and to show him my self-issued tags that I've put on my car, what would be a good way to do that? Or do you have a suggestion as far as how to approach that? And is that even a good idea?
Not a good idea. Even our good constitutional sheriffs in this country usually don't get into that. They certainly have never been trained, not by us. I think maybe one of our good sheriffs, constitutional sheriff in Michigan, Sheriff Leaf, he might be sympathetic to that. I don't know any other sheriff that would. Even Sheriff Dave Mattis, God rest his soul, from Wyoming, who was literally the consummate constitutional sheriff even before I was. He wouldn't have gone along with that. When I was sheriff, I would have told you, look, philosophically, I agree with you. You have this right. I'm not going to change all the city police. They're not going to listen to me. I would, as much as I would love them to listen to me, they're not going to stop doing this and going after you. For me to go into court every time somebody gets one of these traffic citations and try to defend you with my belief in the Constitution and that all this is true, that would be retraining the county attorney, retraining the judges, retraining the justice of the peace, retraining all the officers that don't even work for me. And that's why I say that's not the hill we want to die on, because it's a real hard one.
Yeah, and I think training is the number one issue I've seen. Studying this for a number of years, I really do think training is the problem. So, okay, Paul, go ahead.
And Jackie, let me reiterate what you said. It is a huge problem. It is gargantuan.
Yeah. Okay, go ahead, Paul.
Greetings, Sheriff Mack. We've met before, and it's great to see you on this call. I really appreciate you being here. There's so many questions I have for you, but Jackie's going to limit me, so I'll just come out with one.
Go ahead.
Sheriff, how much knowledge do you have of the bankruptcy of this nation, the emergency war powers from the Civil War, and the fact that we essentially have two governments, one maintained under the Congress and one under the original jurisdiction?
I'm pretty familiar with that, yeah, and I know about that. Most of them don't know about that, and so we're kind of stuck with the system the way it is until we get more constitutional sheriffs to redirect it. And regardless of that, I will tell you that I still am obligated to keep my oath of office to the Constitution.
And we greatly appreciate that, and we'll be doing everything we can to support you, as we discussed a couple of years ago. Yeah, it's a big problem. Everyone on this call right now has done deep study into what happened to this country. And, so when we're confronted by law enforcement sheriffs that have no idea what we know, it's incredibly difficult.
It is. And believe me, when we go through our list of things to counter, we certainly hope that one will still be on the list. But there's so much to cover because there's so much abuse.
Let me just finish on that. So
oh my goodness,
the other challenge we have is, how much do you know about the bar infiltration into America?
Okay, we'll let that one go. That's a good one.
The what infiltration?
The bar.
I'm going to let Jackie articulate it. I'm going to mute out. Jackie's going to articulate what I just said.
The attorney.
BAR?
Yes, the bar, the attorneys. Yes.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
We can't just go and arrest all of them.
You understand that all foreign agents, and they were banned in this country in 1819, right? Under something called the Titles and Nobility Act. So
Well,
all of them are foreign agents.
But believe me, when I run into a constitutional attorney, I absolutely love them.
Yes,
And
that's true.
there's a few of them out there.
There's a few of them out there. I know one. Yes. Just a quick question before we get to the next one. If somebody has the MCO, do you know what the MCO is for a registered car? Like, well, for a car.
MCO.
Yes, you get the manufacturer's certificate of origin, or you
Oh,
get,
yes.
yeah, or the MSO. Okay, so if somebody has that and the car was never registered, what would you think about like that? Literally, you guys don't have anything. You wouldn't care.
Same. I would impound it at a moment's notice if I needed to impound it. But it wouldn't mean anything to me.
Okay. All right then. So Rick, go ahead.
I mean, it means something to me now, but not when I was a rookie. My first 4 or 5 years in law enforcement wouldn't have meant anything to me.
Yeah, understood. Rick?
Okay, just real quick, Sheriff Mack, because you were talking about the Bill of Rights, and most people just jump over the Ninth Amendment, and it's the largest, strongest bulwark against any offenses, because basically it says the enumeration in the Constitution of certain rights shall not be construed to deny or disparage others retained by the people. This would
Correct.
include the right to be left alone, the right to not have vaccines put in your body, the right there's hundreds of rights, literally, in that Ninth Amendment.
Let me address that real quickly. If you want to stop forced vaccinations, you better damn well have your sheriff on board.
Yes.
Yes.
Well, there's another way to do that. Is basically you do a stipulation of material facts to the health agency or whoever, which they agree, and it's a contractual thing. But it's basically if they disagree with any of the facts, they have to do so under the penalty of perjury to be true, correct, and complete. Otherwise, they've agreed to it. It's a common contract principle, and it's by their own codes and stuff. So if they do, then they're agreeing to be personally liable for any damage to your child or you or whatever. And boy, they get a whole different attitude when their skin's in the game.
Yeah, but how successful are any of those challenges or those lawsuits or complaints for damages against the officers who do that?
Oh, it's not a complaint. It's not a lawsuit. It's basically a done deal. It's a contractual agreement for damages.
Well, I don't know a single time where a cop or a public official has paid those.
You do it in advance. You don't wait till they come for you. You tell them, basically it's required in every state for an oath and a bond. You went through that, right?
Right.
So if they don't, then again, under the common law and under commercial law, they're personally liable if they don't have the oath and a bond, if they damage you. The oath and a bond is there for that reason.
Believe me, I'm all for that happening.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I'll turn it over to, there's other people that have their hands up.
Okay, and I'm going to remind everybody we have, 6 minutes. Go ahead, Ed.
Let's make it, I'll go to 6:10.
Okay.
Or 10 after the hour.
Wow, you guys are lucky. Okay, go ahead, Ed.
But you have to double my pay for that.
Okay, I will treble it. Go ahead, Ed. Oh, Ed, you're going to lose your chance. Where are we?
I was muted.
You was
Sorry
muted.
about that.
That's okay.
Yeah, so I was listening to a choral program to Jackie's last Thursday, and there was a guy on there saying that if you get pulled over and the cop has his lights on, emergency lights on, they're declaring that it's an emergency, and most of these tickets are not. They're declaring that it's a crime, that they're stopping you for a crime. And he was boasting to everyone that, that puts the fear of God if you ask the cop, what's the emergency, and then they have to answer that. Is there any validity to that?
None. The cop is merely putting those on so you know that it's time to pull over. He can put them on also to get you out of the way because he needs to go to some other emergency.
Right.
So all they are is a means, statutory law. You see the red and blues on, move to the right. If he stays behind you, and he's just making sure that nobody runs over him. So those will stay on. That's it.
Yeah, the only reason I move over is to let him pass, but
let me add something here. I want all of you to also change your mindset. We're all about changing the mindset of cops. And in fact, I spent the last 10 years of my life trying to do that. I also want you to change your mindset. Okay. Again, focus on getting your sheriff trained, but you need to focus on the preservation of the Bill of Rights. And that is where we're at on all of this with our sheriffs. Yeah, we go over in our training the history of law enforcement, history of sheriffs, and the history of laws, and we certainly go over all of that. But we really dissect the Bill of Rights and say, Sheriff, if you took an oath to uphold and defend this, why do we continue to have asset forfeiture? Why do we continue to take people to jail because your officer got offended or he wanted to teach somebody a lesson? Why is it that we have police out there that are trying to teach people who the boss is instead of you actually defending their rights, which is paramount in this country? It is the only thing. Police do not understand what we are after. And we must be part of the people in this country. All of you on this program tonight, we must know what we're after. And we must keep that simple. And that is our message to cops, because they're little babies, they're embryos when it comes to understanding even the simplest things of the Bill of Rights. Like you mentioned, the 9th Amendment. They don't know what that means.
yeah,
They don't know what the 10th Amendment means. And so let's all keep this simple, and let's make sure that we start with the Constitution, the oath of office, the Bill of Rights. Man, can you imagine if we have half of our nation's police that really know and understand and are dedicated to just preserving the Bill of Rights, and that they understand what we're after in this country is liberty. All of us are after liberty. And yes, many times it's individual liberty. But the bottom line is it's one word. And cops have got to be on board with that, or we're never going to get anywhere. Our country might be too late to save anyway. But I'm going to keep trying, and I hope all of you are too.
Yeah.
I'm not going to stop until my maker calls me home. And that has got to be the same thing, because we are after, in America, we're after liberty. I'm sorry, had to get that out.
You know, in all these years, that's my number one thing, is how do we get the sheriffs on board with us? How do we join together? Because that's the most important thing. Let's put it this way. The elite's children don't become sheriffs. They're our children. And so, you know, how do we lose that connection with them, and how do we rebuild that? That's the important thing. I think it's the most important thing.
Amen.
All right, Salem, you know the rule.
All right, so I carry around with me what I call my
Oh, sorry. Sorry. Oh, sorry.
Got cut off somewhere.
Sorry. No, we're both hitting the unmute button. And okay, go ahead.
Okay, so I carry around with me what I call traveling papers when I get in my car and go around. And it basically is a educational one-page thing that's so it's quick to read. It doesn't waste the cop's time, and it just explains really briefly the Constitution, their duties, my rights. And so I had an experience in Sacramento with the Sacramento, actually it was a CHP, California Highway Patrol, and he pulled me over and I presented him with my paper. And so he took it, and for about 10 or 15 minutes, he was on the phone with somebody talking about it, I presume. They're asking, you know, what should I do in this situation? So my question is, who is he talking to? How far up the chain do people go when they're presented with a legal question or something like this?
Yeah.
And does the sheriff have a legal counsel on hand where they refer such questions so that they make sure, or do they even care, or what are they trying to do? Who are they talking to? What do they?
They don't care. He was probably talking, he was either talking to his sergeant on his cell phone or his lieutenant. The immediate supervisor for a patrol officer is a sergeant. One up from that is lieutenant. So he very well, the lieutenant doesn't get out on the road though too much. He can and will a time or two. The shift commander though is usually the lieutenant, and he's in the office and he's overseeing everything from the office. The sergeant is overseeing things out in the area, out on, with the cops. So, you know, I thought you were going to say you had a pocket constitution and you give them to every cop who stops here, anybody else. You know, and I do that. I keep one handy, and I've given my book out to cops when I've been stopped, and I've given out pocket constitutions. And I said, here, please just read the Bill of Rights. I don't go into anything else. I said, please just read the Bill of Rights and understand that you've never been trained in this and you've never been trained in the oath of office. And I hope that you will seek out training on that.
So it really is just a matter of, we have to educate the cops. They don't know this stuff, and we go in assuming that they know it and that they're just violating the law. Really what it is we need to just one by one try to educate these cops. As,
and I will tell you though, who's going to be the best person on this conversation to train other sheriffs?
well, hopefully you.
Yeah. And it's not because I'm anything special. I don't want anybody to think I'm below my own horn like that. I'm not. But I'm a former sheriff, and I won a case at U.S. Supreme Court. And when you bring that to other cops and other sheriffs, it adds a lot of credibility. To them, you're just a crazy citizen.
Yeah, I totally agree. Thank you again. I really appreciate your time.
Okay, I'm putting a link to all the books from the CSPOA down here. I mean, it's not that expensive, guys. We should be carrying a few copies in our car.
Well, the one that's the cheapest on that is a copy of my Supreme Court case. It's the Victory for State Sovereignty. It's the same size as a pocket constitution. You really, everybody should be handing those out. They're only like $2 each, and you should be handing those out. All of you should have a county sheriff for America's Last Hope. But what I would prefer the most is that you become a member and you help us fund the CSPOA that way. And if you could make a donation of any amount, I don't care, any amount at all, you're really going to push us another day, another week. And we really need to have another convention. Yeah. And we need to get, again, sheriffs. The last time we were planning in Kansas City, and we'll invite sheriffs from all over the country to that. And so you need to be able to fund your sheriff to get there. And but man, those cost a lot of money. Our first one cost $125,000. We've done others since then that were less, but the cheapest we did was $45,000. And we're spending our own money. I'm putting the money from the book sales. I used to be selling lots of books. They don't sell too much anymore, but the county sheriff for America's Last Hope sold about 90,000 copies, and we put that money right back into it. So
yeah, and it is really important, guys, because like we said earlier, Post pays for training for the standard training that goes on, but they do not teach constitutional law. So no. They only get it through CSPOA, and CSPOA, they pretty much have to either pay for themselves to go, or they get some donations like from people like us, but they do not get any funding like the other, like Post does, which Post gets a portion of every citation. So of course they're teaching them to write citations, knowing full well that they're going to get some money out of that system. So
they do train about the crazy sovereign citizen out there.
Oh yes, they do.
They are taught to be afraid of that.
Yeah. Yes, which is really a shame, because we, like I said, they are our kids. Okay, Ed, I think this is going to be your last question. Go ahead.
Yeah.
Oh, I did it again. Sorry, go ahead. We're gonna have
when you were talking about trying to educate some of the sheriffs or the deputies, one of the things I ran into by mistake or by happenstance was I went into the sheriff's office in Maricopa County, and I was lodging a complaint against a neighbor that was a real hothead, and they thought I was filing a complaint the terminology with them is it's a complaint against one of their officers. So this was a lieutenant I was talking to. She got really concerned about this and took me into a conference room, and we spent an hour talking about this thing. So this seems to be another potential remedy, is to go to the sheriff's office and file a complaint if
Sure.
with one of the lieutenants in there. File a complaint against an officer that mistreats you or is not educated
Oh, yeah.
on something. That is a way to do this, because they really took this seriously. I mean, real serious.
Good. That was probably under Sheriff Arpaio.
It was under him, but it was one
Yeah.
of his lieutenants in one
Of
of
course.
the outlying. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was under Arpaio, right?
Right.
So a quick question: how many sheriffs did you say there were in the entire United States?
3,089.
Okay, so how much would it cost to train them with CSPOA? What kind of funding you looking for?
Let's say we got a third that would go to our training, a third.
And what would that cost?
1.5 million.
Wow, that's all.
Yeah.
Ed could actually write us a check for that.
Hurry up, Ed.
Thanks, Jackie.
Wow, no, actually it does not sound very much though, does it really? I mean,
when you look at the grand scheme of things and how much we would really be willing to save our country.
exactly.
If anybody tells me and shows me that there's a more immediate solution that's peaceful and effective than the sheriff standing for liberty in your county,
Yeah.
I will join that tomorrow. I will stop what I'm doing and I will join it tomorrow.
Okay, let me see. You got 3 minutes, guys. Okay, someone asked, would you expect 1/3 to engage in the training?
What? Say
Would
that
you,
again?
Would you expect 1/3 of the officers to actually engage in the training? Do you
Oh,
think?
yes. Yeah, absolutely. If you put the right information in front of the right people, they'll usually do the right thing. And so the people, the sheriff's offices and the people that we have trained usually end up doing pretty good. Of course, there has to be follow-up, and that's where citizens help, and that's where it would really be great if we had a few more people on our staff, and a few more retired cops, a few more retired sheriffs who are some of our constitutional sheriffs who have gone on to other things. But like Sheriff Brad Rogers, he's one of our best historically constitutional sheriff in this country. Well, he's still working in law enforcement because I wanted to hire him, but we had no money. So.
Wow. Okay, the last question is, what is the Mac pack on your website?
Oh, that's a membership in the CSPOA, and then a copy of each one of my books.
All right then. Yeah, GoFundMe would be great, wouldn't it? All right. I want to thank you so much. We've really enjoyed having you. Hope you've enjoyed us. Yeah, it's great.
I can honestly say that I feel really good about the people that were asking questions. I feel good about the event tonight, and thanks so much for having me.
Thank you. All right then. We'll see you later. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye. Good night.
All right. Good night.
Thank you again, Sheriff Mack.
You're welcome.
All right, you two. All right. I'm gonna turn off the recording.
Hey, Jack.